Labas. Per pastaruosius beveik 6 metus mano gyvenimas keitėsi kardinaliai. Ir tame nėra jokios didelės paslapties, aš tiesiog labai daug augau, mokiausi ir tobulėjau. Ir prie mano pokyčių ypatingai prisidėjo vienas žmogus. Tai mano mentorius, mokytojas iš Kanados, Heidema. Jis turi milžinišką patirtį finansų konsultavime ir investavime, draudimo versle. Jis yra apmokęs daugiau nei 184 tūkstančius konsultantų visame pasaulyje. Ir turėdamas tą milžinišką patirtį, šiai dienai jisai dirba tik tai su vienintelė kompanija visame pasaulyje, Capital, ir aš esu vienas iš jo ilgamečių mokinių, jau 4 metai. Kiekvieną savaitę mes su juo kalbam nuotoliniu būdu ir man yra labai džiugu, kad šiemet, aišku, tai nėra pirmas kartas Lietuvoje, bet šiemet jis atskrido į Capital 10 metų gimtadienį švęsti kartu su mumis mūsų rezultatų. Ir man buvo labai džiugu paprašyti jo, kad jisai pasidalintų savo spėjimais ir nuomonę, link ko eina Lietuva, nes Lietuva, kalbant apie finansų rinką, yra tokia kaip smėlio dėžė, lyginant su labiau išprususiom užsienio šalim jau finansiškai, kaip Kanada, nes Kanadoje visą tai, kas vyksta Lietuvoje, kaip jisai sako, vyko prieš 60-80 metų, Lietuvoje viskas eina po truputį link ko ėjo Kanadoje. Tai man buvo labai įdomu išgirsti jo nuomonę ir aš manau, kad tau irgi bus labai įdomu pasiklausyti iš tokio kalibro žmogaus. Jam šiemet sueina 73 metai ir jisai vis dar aktyviai dirba, šiai dienai valdo avialinijų kompaniją ir žmogus turėdamas milžinišką patirtį. Tiesiog pasiklausykit, pamatysit ir išgirsit labai įdomių dalykų. Today I'm with my mentor, friend, teacher, and a really good person that helped me achieve a lot of things in Lithuania, Heidema, and I will call him Jim. Jim, you are in Lithuania, but you're not from Lithuania, you're from Canada. What are you doing here?
Well, I'm working with a company that I really respect, and I'm working with an individual I really respect, and that being you.
Thank you. And we met in, I think, 2016, yeah, in Crete.
We did.
And you were doing some work with our company and Capital. Mm-hmm. We had a manager session that we teach them. And after all the session, you came to me and asked me if I want to be your if I want to work with you and to be coached, to be taught. So why do you choose me?
Well, I chose you and the other individual, Darius. I've been in the business for quite a long time, and you know, I've worked in Canada as an insurance manager, and then certainly started as an insurance agent, and then an insurance manager, and then eventually manager of training and development for the largest insurance company in Canada called London Life. And then I started training around the world, and eventually I ended up in Crete with Capital doing some work on behalf of 2 individuals, Dėkingumas and Arnis, who I'd met a long time ago. And so I've been doing coaching around, and I seldom had any real relationships. I tend to, you know, I'd go in and I would sometimes go back to the same company a number of times and do things, but I'd never had the opportunity to coach someone. And so I thought the timing was right, and within the class I chose 2 people, yourself and Darius, that I wanted to spend time with and help you with your careers, and you fortunately said yes.
Fortunately, we had that opportunity because, you know, you always says that we did hard work, but I don't think so because your knowledge, it's really
powerful, and you helped me to change my life, and I changed my life because every day I'm changing a lot of other people's life. When we first met, I heard from you a story about nobility of this profession that I'm working. Maybe you can tell a little bit of your story.
Well, this is the story about choices and dignity. When I was an agent, I was selling and I was doing okay. And there's an event, an organization in North America, in the world indeed, called the $1 Million Round Table. And I qualified to go to the $1 Million Round Table, meaning I was in the top 2% of salespeople in the world. And I met a lady there who was #1 in the world, and I approached her and asked if I could spend some time with her. And during that conversation, she told me a story which I adopted and adapted and made it my own, and it really affected my ability to help people, my ability to generate a better than average income. And so, if you like, I'll just tell you the story.
Yes,
and we'll act as though Ginteris is a client, and I'm sitting down with him for the first time. And this is how I behaved after I learned the story. And I did it over and over again. And I really didn't change how I behaved. Everybody got the story, regardless of the circumstance of why I'm meeting with them. Because I think it's the foundation of what we do in the business. So thanks for coming in today, Ginteris, and thanks for taking time to examine and plan for the future. I'd like to tell you about business. I mean, may I do that?
Yes, of course.
Oh, excuse me a moment. I have to prepare and have some money in my hand. It's very important that you... I'm in the business of keeping families together, Ginteris, when the worst things happen and when the best things happen. The worst thing that could happen is you may not live as long as you plan. You know, when someone dies too soon, there's two kinds of losses. There's the emotional loss and there's the financial loss. The emotional loss, I can't do much about that. That's going to take whatever time it takes. But I can do something about the financial loss. You know, when someone dies too soon, the family still has to pay the rent or the mortgage. They still have to pay to keep the lights on. They still have to pay to put food on the table. Everybody, in fact, is reaching into their pocket and taking money out of their pocket. I'm the only person that puts money into the family's pocket. I'm the one that allows, through planning, I'm the one that allows the family to stay in the same home, the kids to go to the same school, to keep food on the table. So when the worst things happen, it's all about choices. I wonder, are choices important to you?
Yes.
Well, of course they are. You know, and when people plan with us, and if the worst thing were to happen, they would have those choices. Now, the best thing that could happen, you could live for a long, long time, and at some point you're going to slow down. And when you slow down, you have to have the financial reserves set aside so you can carry on with your life, so your life doesn't change because you're no longer generating an income. And when that happens, if you've not saved, you can lose face because you have to give up some things. But if you have planned, then what I give you is dignity. So my question really is, again, are choices and dignity important to you?
Yes.
Well, that's wonderful, because what I'd like to do now is to talk about your current situation. What's going on in your life today? May we do that?
Yeah.
That's my process.
And first time when you told me a story, I really understood why and what I'm doing in the business, and I started using the story every time with every client, and every morning when I wake up, I work for people, for my clients, because I want that they, after 20 or 30 years, will say, if not Ginteris, I will not have all the money I have. If not Ginteris, I don't have the security I had for my family. So every morning I wake up because of your story, and because I want to tell that story for my clients.
Marvelous.
And one time you told me that you had a bad experience with your client, and it's really touched me. Maybe you can share that story.
Well, this probably was the toughest moment in my career. I had gone out and met with this couple, and I wasn't a particularly effective salesperson at that moment. And I probably could have done a much better job, but I didn't. And they didn't buy from me. And some months later, there was a knock at my door at my home. I don't know how this lady found me, but she knocked on my door, and I opened the door, and I remembered her. And the first words out of her mouth, I will remember until the moment I die. She said, "Why didn't you do your job?" And even today, it makes me emotional. It affects me. And I realized at that moment that either I had to get serious about the business or I had to get out of the business. Her husband had died. They didn't have any insurance. She said, "I have to move in with my family, who I hate." She said, "I don't have any choices." And from that moment forward, I got serious about the business. And I make sure I learned. You know, there's a phraseology I really like, which you've heard before, Ginteres, which is, if you want to be paid like a professional, don't act like an amateur. And I pride myself on my level of professionalism, that I do a much better job. The story helps me with that much better job. But my commitment to the business, the commitment to my customers is much, much deeper than because of her. And I thank her for that. And I wish I had done my job, but I didn't. But I made sure, from that point forward, I did do my job.
Good, nice. And you are not young anymore, sorry. But you're still working. You are still in business.
Yeah.
Why?
Well, I guess at this point, you know, I'm this year, in a couple of months, in December, I'm going to turn 73. And most people at my point in my life are retired and, you know, doing their gardening or fishing or playing golf or whatever they do. That holds no appeal to me. I think that I have the ability to go out there and keep rendering value. You know, I just finished 5 years of service as a paramedic. I'm now interested in becoming a hypnotherapist. I'm still traveling and training. I'm a chief executive for an airline. I don't see in my future slowing down. I don't see any purpose. It holds no appeal to retire. And as long as I have my health, I will continue. You know?
That's inspired me because, you know, you have experience, you have good income, you just could do nothing, but still you are working, you are helping people like me to achieve my goals. You're writing books, that is crazy. Because a lot of people think that if I have money or I have a lot of time, I could do nothing. But I think it's fake, because if you have money or you have a lot of time, for example, myself, I want to do bigger things to help, to see a bigger pictures, to help people in Lithuania, to have a lot of, to have a better situation in their lives, to have money, to have security for their families, and not only in Lithuania. I want to make this world better, a better place.
Well, you know, it's I am in a good financial situation because I've walked the path that I believe and that I tell my customers. But you know, if you plan, like we encourage our clients to plan, then you have those choices. You know, I have my dignity, I have my choices, and I'm not forced to work if I don't want to work. You know, and
because you plan.
Yeah, because I planned, and you know, people don't plan to fail; they just fail to plan.
I heard.
You heard that somewhere? Yeah. Well, I like these sorts of things, these commentaries, because I choose my words very carefully when I'm interacting with the customer. And I think these things, such as people don't plan to fail, they just fail to plan, are very meaningful to them. They get it, and so it's really important when we're out there interacting with a customer that we not only touch their mind, but we touch their heart.
Yeah. And Lithuania, it's quite different in business perspective, in insurance perspective, and our financial advisor perspective. What is the most different in what you see from Canada and Lithuania? Where we are going in Lithuania? Well,
I've been very fortunate with my business. I've trained now in excess of 173,000 people in 50% of the world. So I've been in all kinds of economies, all kinds of social structures, done a lot of work in Russia and China and places like that. And I've seen companies and countries at different levels of maturity. Fundamentally, Lithuania, when it comes to financial planning, when it comes to getting financial advice, to planning and protection and all that, is pretty immature. I mean, you've only had it for 20 years, the ability to buy insurance products, and so and the level of understanding is relatively low within your culture, but that'll change. I mean, with the media and social networks and all of that, people are learning about all sorts of things much more quickly than they would have in the past. And it's going to evolve really quickly. People are going to come to appreciate the distinction, the differences of how one financial advisor behaves versus another. The people I think who will do really well in this industry will be the ones who sell based on relationship rather than transaction. There's far too many people in our business who sell based on transaction. And they have trouble. Because you can't, if I'm going to go out and buy a car or a suit or a house or an apartment or something, once I purchase it, I can own it, I can wear it, I can drive it, I can live in it. But when they sit down with us and they do financial planning, we don't even give them a piece of paper because it's all electronic. So you better have a strong relationship behind that, and that relationship is based upon trust. So behaviors are really important. And I think it's really good to work with M Capital. I think it's a very good company in that they value that relationship model, and I think that's going to be their competitive advantage. Because you will find as it matures, as the marketplace matures in Lithuania, you're going to find a lot more players here, and because they'll become more interested as the marketplace matures. And with that maturity will come competition, and our competitive advantage, our distinctive difference, will be that we sell based on relationship.
Okay. I think one time you told me that in Lithuania we can behave whatever we want because in Canada you need to get license to advise people about financials or insurance. Even if you make bad advice for people, you can go to jail or
Yeah. In Canada, it's very mature. Insurance has been in Canada for 180 years or something like that. So the marketplace is very mature. The customer's knowledge is very high. Their expectations are very high, and it's very heavily regulated. And so when you sell anything in Canada, you have to tell the customer how much commission you're making. If you lie to the customer, in every jurisdiction, Canada, we have provinces and territories. In every province and territory, they have a superintendent of insurances. And if he finds out that you've lied to the customer, misled them, he can take your house, your bank account, and throw you in jail. Yeah. So it's serious.
It will come in Lithuania too.
Absolutely, because in the EU, there's rights. There's a rights environment. You're part of that, and at some point those laws that exist within the EU will exist in Lithuania, and there's very, very strict laws. England, France, Germany, they all have these laws in place where you have to behave. You have to be very honest with the customer, and if you're not and they catch you, you're in trouble.
That's why I'm waiting for that moment, because I'm usually talk about this with my clients, and because they see what's happening in marketplace. A lot of salesperson just want a transaction, as you said, and they only think about their commissions, but not the situation of people. They are not want to help, or just want to get a paycheck in the pocket. So I'm really waiting.
Well, it'll clear up the marketplace too. It'll cause some people to leave the marketplace who shouldn't be in it. Yeah. And if you're, one thing that's good about M Capital, there's many things that are quite good about it, but there's one thing that's good about that and how you're behaving in the marketplace is that you're selling based on relationship. So when you sell on relationship, there's a level of honesty that's required, and therefore we're meeting the customer's needs, and it's doubtful that you'll ever get in trouble with anybody because you're behaving appropriately.
Yeah. So, Jim, how did you get from joining the industry, like in insurance business, and how did you get from there to what you're doing now?
All right. Well, it's a bit of a long story, so I apologize to the audience, but I guess at one point in my life I was operations manager for a large computer company, and I had a really good income, better than average income. I had a company car and lots of benefits and all of that stuff. But it was a company that was doing transactions, and it was a company that, in some regards, some of their behaviors I didn't appreciate, and I wanted more control of myself, in my life, and more opportunity. So I went around and I approached a number of insurance companies because I had an insurance agent and he was very good, and I wanted to take a look at that industry. Nobody recruited me into the business. Nobody approached me and asked me to come in. I went around and I interviewed a couple of companies, and one of them I didn't like at all. I wasn't impressed with their leadership. I wasn't impressed with how they behaved. But another one that I was quite impressed with, London Life. It's a Canadian company. It's probably the largest. They have 6,000 full-time advisors, and I joined them. It was really tough in the beginning because they have very high standards of behavior and professionalism. I had a lot to memorize. They won't let you in front of the customer unless you know what you're saying and doing. So I had to memorize scripts on how to make a phone call, how to ask for referrals, how to walk someone through a process, how to close the sale, and do all of that. So there's a lot of memorization that I had to do, which is a good thing because, and I think that's one of the reasons that I'm in the business I'm in, is I think the fundamental question that you ask when you're in the business is, what do I say or what do I do in a given situation?
Yeah.
And that's what I try to answer. So I joined London Life. I struggled in the beginning. I almost left it at one point, but I had a really good manager, and he took me aside and he said, well, before you resign, remind me why you came in the business. And I listed the things that were important to me: the independence, the freedom, control of my income, and a few other things. And he said, do you think it's still possible in this business? And I said, yeah. And he said, well, maybe you need to try a bit harder. And we did work together, and I got through that period. And eventually I qualified to go to MDRT, which is the top 2%, as I mentioned. And in there you meet people that are just so much farther ahead than you are. I mean, I was just in awe. I remember sitting there, and I was sitting beside some gentleman, and he says, is this your first time here? And I said, yeah. And he says, well, how was your year last year? How much did you earn? And I said, well, I earned about 120,000 euros. And he said, okay. And I said, how much do you earn? And he said, well, about 480,000 euros. I thought, wow. And that's where I met this lady from MDR at the top of the number one in the world. And we don't know how much exactly she earns, but it's somewhere around 25 million euros a year. So, so she's doing okay. So, And then after that, based on what I had, the conversation I had with her and what I learned from MDRT, I started changing my behaviors. And at one point I was number one in the company of 6,000 agents. So I figured it out. I figured a lot of things out. But it wasn't enough for me to stay. At that point, the company was bought by another company, and the leadership of the company changed, and their policies and procedures changed, and I didn't feel I wanted to do that. So I connected myself with an organization that most of the insurance companies of the world belong to, called LIMRA, which is the Life Insurance Marketing Research Association. They're based in the United States, but they have membership all around the world. And I connected with them only as a contractor, and they began to send me around the world. And I've trained I trained 100,000 people alone in China. I did training courses with 3,000 people in the room, and so you learn very quickly how to present, how to communicate, and then smaller organizations, all kinds of them, and all kinds of cultures, and I did that a lot. Probably 2 weeks out of every month I was somewhere in the world, if not 3 weeks, and it was hard on my family. I've got been married for coming up 47 years now, and I've got 4 kids and 10 grandkids. And, when you travel a lot, when you travel a lot, they pay price.
And 2 adopted sons.
Yeah, well, a number of adopted sons. That's right. Yeah, I think I have 5 or 6 of them now. Yeah. I'm still pushing your papers around. So we're making jokes with Jim that me and Arius is his retirement plan in the future. Not a joke from my point.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So now I've got a bunch of things going on. I've written 7 books in 11 languages. I'm writing my 8th book right now. I've just stopped being a paramedic. I started that 5 years ago. And that was very demanding, and I was surprised I did well at it, because when you get older, you don't have as much gray matter as other people do, but I seem to do very well at it. And I'm also working for a small regional airline as their chief operating officer, and
you're working with M Capital, like
working
one company.
It's only that I've chosen M Capital because I met the 2 of the founders, Arnis and Gilvinas, probably 12 years ago. Before I was doing a course in Poland for FMG, and both of those gentlemen were working there. I'm not sure, but Milana might have been their CEO at that point, but I didn't meet her. I didn't meet her until 4 years ago when I went to Crete. But I kept in contact with Arnis in particular, and then they invited me to Crete, and then in Crete I tore their company apart.
I remember that.
And they changed a lot of their thought processes about how they should behave in the marketplace, and I've been fortunate for the past 4 years to be working with all kinds of audiences within M Capital. And I enjoy it. And I'm also coaching. I picked up another person today, so I'm coaching 11 people within your company, and Neris being one of those. Yeah. Neris and Gintras, I should say. Gintras being one of those people. Gintras and Neris I've been coaching for 4 years now. So for 3.5 years, it was every week, and then now it's become every 2 weeks. So because I really can't take too much of. No, it's just. So, go ahead.
And every year my results almost double it, and still you're saying every time you see nothing yet.
It's I guess where my expertise comes in, because I've worked with so many levels of within the organization, and I was a manager of training and development for London Life, so I really understand how to train people, and I understand what the cycle of development looks like within the industry. And professionally, when I was selling, I doubled my income every year. And that's and the people I'm coaching now, I've got 10 that I'm coaching right now. I'm taking another one today. But those other 8 people, taking Nereus and Kintris out of the picture, with those other 8 people, they've doubled their income in the past year, and I will continue to help them to do that. And and it's just a matter of systems, processes, and tools.
Yeah. And what you could say for people, maybe they, I don't know, thinking that maybe I want to join on Capital.
Mm-hmm.
Is this a good company, or maybe this career is not for me, or for me, I don't know. This is a good opportunity, or
well, it's absolutely a good opportunity. It may not be the right opportunity for every person, because this opportunity you can't play at. You have to work at, and so it requires a lot of discipline to be successful in this business. One of my sons wanted to come into the business at one point, and he asked me if he would be successful. Now, bearing in mind, he's my son, and I've got all this experience that I can add to him. And I told him that there's 2 things that have to be in place to be successful in this business. One is you have to really believe. You have to believe in the product. You have to believe in the company. You have to believe in your leadership. You have to believe, most importantly, in yourself, because you're tested in this business a lot. And the other thing is you have to be prepared to pay the price. The price is of learning. There's a lot of rejection in the industry, that from customers because they don't understand. And so, but interestingly enough, and I'm sure you would attest to this, the longer you're in the business, when you master certain processes, there's a lot less rejection.
True.
True. And it becomes a lot easier. But that period of learning is hard for people. That period of learning is demanding, and some people are not prepared to pay that price, and so if you're serious about taking control of your future, if you're serious about taking control of your income, this is the place to come. Amp Capital is probably the best company from my perspective in Lithuania, and it's filled with some very talented people like Interest, like yourself, and there's a lot of systems and processes that they've now adopted. I'm probably the source of a good number of those, and
exactly so.
and they work really well. And if you master those systems and processes and use those tools, you can be very, very successful and raise your income dramatically very quickly and make a real impact in people's lives. I mean, we have to be serious about this business, because when we don't do our job, somebody pays a price. I hope that whoever comes in the business never has someone knock on their door, because it was shocking. It broke my heart. And I think that if you're serious about it and really care about the customer and learn how to walk with them and help them make good decisions, it's good for you intellectually, emotionally, and spiritually.
Thank you, Jim, for everything.
My pleasure.
Tikiuosi, kad tau patiko šitas interviu ir sužinojai kažką naujo ir naudingo iš mano mentoriaus Heidemos. Ir aš tikrai tikiu ir manau, kad jeigu nori būti kažkokios srities profesionalas, arba nori būti labai sėkmingas žmogus, arba tiesiog augti, tu turi mokytis, tu turi tobulėti, nes kito kažkokio scenarijaus nelabai yra. Ir nebūtina iš karto ieškoti kažkokių brangių mentorių, brangių knygų, brangių mokymų, jeigu neturi resursų tam, nereikia pasiduoti šitoje vietoje. Aplinkui mus tikrai yra nemažai informacijos, pačių nemokamų knygų, webinarų, seminarų, podcastų, nemokamą video turinio, tai reikia paieškoti. Ir siūlau toli neieškoti, prenumeruoti mano kanalą. Ir aš dalinuosi ir dalinsiuosi tuo nemokamu turiniu, noriu padėti žmonėms tapti finansiškai raštingesniais Lietuvoje, noriu padėti žmonėms tapti sėkmingais ir pasiekti savo gyvenimo tikslus.